Hey builders, before we begin today's episode, I want to tell you about something really cool we have coming up. It's called the Fail Safe Feedback Workshop, and it's happening October 27 through 29, 2024. During the workshop, this virtual workshop, we're going to get together for 90 minutes every single day to revamp how you give feedback and help you give feedback to teachers that not only will teachers not ignore, but they'll actually welcome, embrace, and implement. Over the course of 3 days, we are going to learn how to quickly diagnose the root cause of a teacher's practice. We're going to go in deep about how to use microslicing so that you can do it within 5 to 7 minutes rather than taking 30 minutes and you still don't know what to say to a teacher or what's wrong or what's working in a teacher's classroom. And then we're also going to show you how to give teachers the feedback that they need in a way that they can actually hear it. So you'll never worry again about what to say to a teacher, or you'll never have to struggle through one of those awkward feedback conversations. You'll know exactly what to say and how to say it. And then we're going to show you how to follow up to make sure that your feedback sticks. Now, normally this is only available to people inside of BU, but so many people have been asking for this workshop that we've made a few tickets available to non-BU members. And if you want one of those tickets, all you need to do is go to buildershipuniversity.com/feedback. That's buildershipuniversity.com/feedback. Now, we only have a few tickets available to non-BU members. So if you go to that website and you don't see anything there, then all the tickets are gone. So you need to hurry up and grab your ticket today at buildershipuniversity.com/feedback. Now, on with the show. You're listening to the School Leadership Reimagined podcast, episode 282. How do builders like us make a dramatic difference in the lives of our students in spite of all the obstacles we face? How do you keep your vision for your school from being held hostage by resistant teachers, uncooperative parents, ridiculous district policies, or a lack of time, money, or resources? If you're facing those challenges right now, here's where you'll find the answers, strategies, and actionable tips you need to overcome any obstacle you face. You don't have to wait to make a difference in the lives of the people you serve. You can turn your school into a success story right now with the people and resources you already have. Let's get started. Hey builders, welcome to another episode of the School Leadership Reimagined podcast. I'm your host, Robyn Jackson, and today we're going to talk about why some teachers ignore your feedback. Now, we've all had this happen to us. We have sat down with a teacher, we have given them feedback about something they need to address or correct or refine in their teaching practice. And sometimes the teachers sit there and they nod their heads, and sometimes they may even ask a few questions or push back a little bit. Some of them sit and take it. Sometimes you even get a blank stare. I hate that one, but it happens. But you give them the feedback, you give them the write-up, and then a few weeks later, you visit their classroom and nothing has changed. It is so frustrating when that happens, when you see the same thing happening, the same thing you just addressed in your feedback conversation. Well, today I want to talk about why that happens and why our feedback often gets ignored by teachers, or at least if not ignored, it doesn't get implemented. And the truth is, it's not your fault and it's not the teacher's fault. You see, it's how we were trained. We were told to give feedback in a specific way, and the very training we received about how to give teachers feedback is the very thing that is making our feedback so easy to ignore. And it's not the teacher's fault either. It's not that the teachers don't want to get better, or they're just being resistant or obstinate, or all the things that we often accuse teachers of being. It's not their fault either. You see, if we don't give them feedback in a way that they can hear it, they can't implement it. So today we're going to talk about 3 things that make your feedback easy to ignore. And then we're going to talk about how to give feedback like a builder. All right, so let's dive in. So the first reason that our feedback is so easy to ignore is something that I call Educator Ease, right? It's the language we were taught to use as educators. And I have to be honest with you. Can I do that? Can I share something that may not be popular? the older I get, the more impatient I get with Educator Ease. I hear a lot of administrators using the language that we were trained to use, that we were told to use, in ways that make me feel like they're hiding behind the language, in ways that almost make me feel like they don't really know what they're talking about. And so I really have to work with myself when I hear people, spouting all these things, because when I ask, okay, what does that mean? People struggle to answer. Right. And that's the problem with Educator Ease. Yes, we have a common language. It's great that we have a common language, but a lot of times we don't check to make sure that we have a common understanding of the language. I'll throw out some words: best practice, rigor, routines, checking for understanding. These are all terms of art. And so I'm not mad at the terms themselves, but I do believe that how we use those terms, how we throw them about, is can be reckless at times. Because when you say rigor, you mean one thing, but when people hear rigor, they may think something else. In fact, I remember I used to teach workshops on rigor, and I would always ask teachers, what is rigor? And if there were 20 teachers in the room, I would get 20 different answers. It's one of those terms where everybody thinks they know what it means, and they really don't. And so when you are using Educator Ease in your feedback, you can often make your feedback easy to ignore. And it's not even that the teacher's ignoring it. It's just that what you're saying and what they're hearing may be two different things. So you might say, hey, listen, you need to do more checking for understanding. And then the teacher goes about and they think they're doing checking for understanding, and you go in a classroom, but you don't see what you believe to be checking for understanding. And so you're frustrated because the teacher isn't implementing your feedback, when in fact the teacher is implementing your feedback. So why do we do this? Why do we use the Educator Ease? Well, part of it is our training. Part of it is the instrument. Part of it is, I think, that we think that if we don't use those terms, then our feedback doesn't sound as official, when the opposite is actually true. So here's the way you get around it, right? You're not going to reform using that in a day. And a lot of times you may be required to use that kind of language because of the way that your observation system is set up. So I'm not saying to stop use the language, but I am saying that when you find yourself using Educator Ease, you need to stop and say, what I mean by that is. So if you say, I'd like to see more rigor in your lessons. And what I mean by that is, I want to see more ambiguity. Instead of students just, you're asking questions and then students giving you the quote unquote right answer, what I'd like to see you play around a little bit with some of the ambiguity of the topics and teach students how to navigate the ambiguity where there isn't a single right answer, or even to incorporate a little bit more complexity in it where there may be multiple right answers, so that or multiple pathways to the right answers, so that students can begin to learn how to think in more rigorous ways. So notice now, I'm not just saying rigor, I'm talking specifically about ambiguity and complexity. I define those terms, and now the teacher and I have a greater chance of having a shared understanding. Instead of just saying, hey, you need to do more checking for understanding, give the teacher specific instances in the lesson where they moved on without checking in with kids first to make sure they understand. A lot of teachers hear checking for understanding and say, does that make sense? I mean, I do that. That's one of my verbal tics. Does that make sense? And everybody kind of nods and they think that's checking for understanding. So helping the teacher understand what you mean by that. Do you mean asking a particular question where students have to use the information that you just gave them in order to come up with the answer, to see if students can use the information? That's an example of what I mean by checking for understanding. So instead of just giving teachers Educator Ease, ask them or use the term, go ahead, but then define that term for teachers in a way that helps the teachers understand what you mean by that term, so that you and the teacher are more likely to have a shared understanding. And with that shared understanding, you can actually, when you go into the classroom, see what you're talking about, or see the teacher attempting what you're talking about. Okay, so that's the first thing, Educator Ease. The second reason that a lot of teachers ignore our feedback is that our feedback is too much. I mean, we give teachers laundry lists of feedback. And again, not our fault. We were trained to do this, first of all, But we also are given feedback instruments that have domains and subdomains and sub-subdomains. And we are expected to give teachers feedback on all aspects of their lesson. And when we do that, let's say I give a teacher 5 things that they need to think about for before I come into their classroom again. Well, one of 3 things is going to happen. Either the 5 things I give the teacher are so overwhelming that the teacher just says, forget it, I'm doomed, and they don't try anything. Or the teacher will cherry pick the things that they want to do based on what they want to do or what they feel they can do and not get to all 5 things. Or the teacher's going to attempt to do all 5 things, but they won't be able to get all 5 things done well. And so you'll go back into the classroom, and if the teacher's done nothing, you're frustrated. If the teacher's cherry picked, you feel like you have to give them credit for what they did do, but then you're still, looking for the stuff that you told them, the other stuff you told them to do. Or if they try to do everything, a lot of times the class gets worse because they're trying to do too much and trying to get good at too much too fast. So giving teachers a laundry list creates a situation where either they ignore your feedback outright, or in their attempts to implement your feedback, you don't see enough positive change in the classroom to justify the work and effort that you and the teacher put into giving and implementing the feedback. So too much feedback can make your feedback easy to ignore. It's hard to figure out, if I have 10 things to do, what I'm supposed to do first. What is going to make the biggest difference? And that's why I love one thing feedback, because one thing feedback takes all those 10, 12 things on your evaluation instrument that you're giving teachers, commentary about, and it sifts through all of that and says, of all the things that I notice, here is the root. And here's the one thing that you need to focus on now that will immediately turn this lesson from ineffective to effective, or will make this effective lesson even more effective. And if you do that, go through the laundry list, yes, but then create meaning, offer the teacher insight about what does that laundry list mean for them. Then you help the teacher. Then your feedback is actually useful. Then a teacher can say, you know what? Yeah, I see that. If you just give the laundry list, wake me up when you're done. But when you take that list of things and you help me understand what this means for me as a teacher, how this impacts my practice and how my practice is impacting students, now I'm interested. Now you have my attention. And so rather than just kind of reciting the laundry list to teachers, or doing what I see a lot of administrators doing is saying, we recognize the laundry list is a problem, so we just pick a glow and a grow. Well, again, don't get mad, but glows and grows have been so misused, right? Okay, here's one thing that you did great, and here's one thing that you need to work on. And a lot of times the glow has nothing to do with the grow. And so these are 2 pieces of random information. What am I supposed to do with it? How does it offer me insight into my practice or direction about what I should do next? And so a lot of times we're just, we see a classroom and the classroom's just a complete mess. And then we give a glow and a grow, and a glow is like, well, at least nobody got killed. And then then we have this, then we can't even decide on one grow because there's so many things that need to be addressed. Well, then the glow and grow format isn't serving you. And yet that's what we're trained to do. And we're trained to do that for everybody. That works for some teachers. It doesn't work for others. You know what works for everybody? One thing feedback. When you go in and you say, hey, these are all the things I saw. Here's what I think it means. And here's the impact that it's having on you and your students. So here, if you focus on this, here's how your lesson can improve and grow and get better. Here's how you can take something that wasn't working and turn it into something that is working. Now that's feedback that teachers can use. That's feedback that teachers can grow from and show improvement from one visit to the next. It becomes clear, they can't unsee it, and then they actually implement it. Okay? So first thing, too much feedback. First thing is that using Educator Ease. Second thing is too much feedback. The third thing that makes your feedback easy to ignore is when you don't have a call to action. So I've observed hundreds of feedback conversations, and the thing that I think is kind of like problem number one is at the end of the feedback conversation, the administrator says, "So, there's your feedback. There's your glow and your grow. And I guess I'll see you in 3 months." But there's no call to action. There's nothing that you're asking the teacher to do before the next time you get into the classroom. So a lot of times we just give feedback to teachers and then we just hope, pray, maybe even expect them to implement it, but we never make those expectations clear. You know how you can solve that in a way that's very clean and simple? If you give teachers one thing feedback, you can say, so the next time I come into your classroom, here's what I'm going to be looking for. Here's what I expect to see. Here's what I want you to do next. Just saying something very specific, this is what I want you to do with the feedback that I'm giving you, makes your feedback more likely to be implemented. It's not even that the teachers don't want to implement your feedback, but a lot of times when you just give it to them and say, so, there it is, they think, well, okay, great. They may try to implement it in a way that you can't even see. They may take the feedback and say, thank God I survived another feedback conversation and put it in a drawer with the other ones and continue to teach the way they've always taught. They may try to implement your feedback and get stuck. So if you don't give them a call to action, you are leaving their implementation up to chance. A specific call to action. This is what I want you to do with the feedback. This is how we're going to follow up. And getting some agreement around that helps make your feedback something that teachers will not and cannot ignore. You see, the way that we are trained to give feedback becomes a compliance issue. We basically get into classrooms that we're told we need to get into because of a contract this many times for this many minutes with this particular instrument, this many post-observation and pre-observation conferences, a write-up format that follows a very specific framework. And it becomes more about complying to the requirements of our district than it does about really supporting teachers. I get it. I know that we all have requirements around how we do feedback. We have to get into classrooms so many times, but just because those requirements are there doesn't mean that we can't take the feedback conversation and process and turn it into something that's really meaningful for teachers. I am so tired of bad feedback. You don't deserve it, and your teachers definitely don't deserve it. Your teachers are there every single day in front of students, helping students learn, and they're doing their best. And we owe it to them and to their students to give teachers feedback that they can actually use. It's time to stop making teachers sit through these boring, laundry list of teaching behaviors riddled with educator ease, and we somehow call that feedback. Why not if we have to have the conversation anyway, why not make it a conversation that actually means something, where people, both you and the teacher, walk out of that conversation glad that you had that conversation? So here's what builders do. The first thing that builders do is we understand what the purpose of feedback is. It's not compliance. It's not even to make the teacher a better teacher. The purpose of feedback is to go into the classroom and give the teacher insight about their practice that they would not otherwise get. A lot of times we are blind about our own stuff, or there are parts of us that we can't see. I can't see the back of my head unless I do some weird thing with the mirror. But that's why I have good friends and colleagues and a husband who can, when I go out, they can check the back of my head and make sure that I don't go out looking crazy. That's what feedback is supposed to do for the teacher, right? So the first thing is that if your feedback is not offering a teacher insight, something that they may or may not have been able to see on their own, what's the point? Right? So that's why I love one thing feedback, because one thing feedback looks at the pattern and gives teachers that root cause, which helps them get insight about their practice that may not be available to them any other way. No matter how self-reflective we are, it's always helpful for somebody to come in and say, here's what I saw, here's what I think the pattern means, and give me insight for things that I can't see about my practice. That is the purpose of feedback. And so we should be designing our feedback process. We should be designing the way that we observe. We should be designing our feedback conversations to offer that insight. The second thing is that once we give them insight, our feedback should be inviting teachers to do things differently. If we give people insight and we say, okay, so, there's some insight, good luck, then we've missed part of the feedback conversation. But the second thing is, if we give them insight about their practice that helps them see the one thing, the most important thing that they need to be addressing right now, then we can invite them to do something different. So here's what's the one thing. The one thing that you need to address the most right now is that we need to give students opportunities to make meaning for themselves. Right now, your classroom is, you're telling them everything step by step by step. And I understand that you have to give them some preliminary information, but after we give them that information, how do we help students use that information for themselves? How do we help students take ownership of that information and make their own meaning using that information? That's what we need to work on next. And so then the next step is to give them something to do, show them how to do it. You don't have to tell them what to do. We have, one of the things we're going to be doing at this fail-safe feedback workshop is we're going to be talking about 4 types of feedback that you can give so that you can give people feedback that always leaves them a choice. You can create a conversation where you can make suggestions, even recommendations, but then help teachers take advantage of those suggestions and recommendations and turn those suggestions and recommendations into action that they own because they've chosen it. And we're going to show you how to do that. So giving them insight, but then inviting them to do things differently in their practice. And then finally, then showing them what will happen if they do. Helping people see what their practice could look like if they implement your feedback. A lot of times we don't do that. We just tell people what to do as if we're the experts, when in fact, we're all colleagues. We're all figuring this out together. But if you could help teachers see, if you do this, this is what I believe will happen for your classroom. This is what I will believe will happen for your students. Then there's an incentive there. Then they can also have a way to gauge whether or not your feedback is working, whether or not they're doing it correctly. Because if I tell you, hey, if you help students make meaning for themselves, then what will happen is students will take more ownership over their own learning. Students will start operating in a more independent way. Students will not always be looking for you for the answers. They will come up with their own answers and they'll find new ways of applying the information to their own lives without you having to create real world connections. Okay. That gives the teachers a rubric by which they can look for whether or not they're doing it right. If you do this, this is what I should be able to see happening for your students. And when I go back into the classroom, I'm not just looking to see, is the teacher doing what I asked them to do? I'm looking to see, is it having the right response with the students? And then we come back together and the feedback becomes richer because a teacher can say, I noticed that. And when I did this, the student did this. And this teacher now has ownership over the material. The teacher now can judge for themselves. They don't rely on you to tell them I'm doing a good job or I'm not doing a good job. You've given the teacher the tools to be able to figure that out for themselves. And that's ultimately what you want as a builder. The whole purpose of giving teachers feedback is to help them grow on their own. Your feedback, if it doesn't empower teachers, if it doesn't create a sense of ownership in your teachers, then you're doing it wrong. If your feedback means that teachers are waiting for you to tell them you got it correct, you can keep your job, congratulations, versus your feedback giving teachers information that they can take ownership of and continue to grow even when you're not in the classroom, then you're doing it wrong. So the reason that many teachers ignore or don't implement or don't welcome your feedback, it's not about you. It's not about the teacher. It's about the framework that we are using to give feedback. The framework that we were trained in is really more of an evaluation framework. It's more of a compliance framework. It's a framework that creates a lot of words in writing, but not a lot of change that happens in the classroom. But when you give feedback like a builder, everything changes. First of all, you give teachers insight about their practice that they may not have been able to grab on their own. Second of all, that insight invites teachers to do things differently. And Third, when they do things differently, you help them see the impact that it can have on students so that teachers can gauge their own practice. You've given them another source of feedback other than you to help them see the effectiveness of your feedback. You do those three things, and your feedback will help teachers transform their practice. It'll get teachers growing. They'll welcome your feedback. They'll be excited about your feedback and then excited to tell you they did it and this is the difference that it made in their classroom. When you give feedback the right way, you can help your teachers grow. And we say you can help your teachers grow at least one level in one critical domain every single year. Often it's more than that. So if teachers are ignoring your feedback, or you're not seeing the growth and change in the classroom that you want to see, then let's abandon the way that we are trained to give feedback, because it's not working. And let's try to give teachers feedback like a builder. I'll talk to you next time. Hey, if you're ready to get started being a builder right away, then I want to invite you to join us at Buildership University. It's our exclusive online community for builders just like you, where you'll be able to get the exact training that you need to turn your school into a success story right now with the people and resources you already have. Inside, you'll find our best online courses, live trainings with me, tons of resources, templates, and exemplars, and monthly live office hours with me, where you can ask me anything and get my help on whatever challenge you're facing right now. If you're tired of hitting obstacle after obstacle and you're sick of tiny little incremental gains each year, if you're ready to make a dramatic difference in your school right now, then you need to join Buildership University. Just go to buildershipuniversity.com and get started writing your school success story today.